Oh, hello. Here we are, poet to poet, writer to writer, on a cold day in December, and I'm with my friend and poet and New England Poetry Club treasurer, uh, Linda Conte. And Linda is an accomplished poet, and she has a new poetry collection out from Ibbetson Street Press, Seldom Purely. Conte received her BA in English from Connecticut College. She has worked as at MIT Media Lab, where she helped produce the Poetry at the Media Lab series, and also is credited with shortening the name of the Ibbetson Street Press to Ibbetson Street for her suggestion. And as one of the founding members, and it's on and off, does consulting work for us, and was a website manager in the beginning of with who Ray Conte, her husband, set us up. But this is a Somerville-based program, so I'm going to ask you first. You were you are a long-time Somerville resident, and how has it been? How has it been for a poet, for a creative, to be here in our sort of unique community?
Well, naturally, Doug Holder,
Mhm.
I owe a lot to you. Uh-oh, that's my grandfather clock, excuse me. I meant to stop that.
It's all right.
Um, but you know, Ibbetson Street has done an awful lot for me, and you've done a lot for me, Doug. So Somerville has been good to me poetry-wise. I would also say that both of my books have a Somerville area artist that provided the art. This is
Jane Goldman, yeah, yeah.
watercolor. And then Marjorie Nichols did my recent book cover. This is, she found a blossom on the street and took a photo of it in a vase. She's a professional photographer. And I thought it kind of fit the theme of my book because things are seldom purely perfect. And this is kind of an imperfect flower because it was found on the street, but it's still very beautiful. So those are a couple of Somerville people. And then we have a Somerville Poet Laureate. That's a wonderful thing and very...
He, in fact, blurbed your book.
He did. Lloyd
Lloyd
Schwartz
Schwartz, yeah.
is doing great job as Poet Laureate, I'd say. If anybody's interested in doing more poetry things, they should sign up for his, what does he call it? Just talk about a poem. He calls it Talking About a Poem, and it's through the East Somerville Library. That librarian sets it up for him.
And you're chairman of the board of actually the Poet Laureate committee as well. So very active in that as well. It's been almost 20 years since we published Slow as a Poem, your first book of poetry, and now Seldom Purely. And I remember when we were getting it published, we were getting the help from Jack Powers. I remember in that little printing place on Charles Street in Boston. It's quite a thing.
Yeah, we go way back, Doug. I just was rifling through some old calendars, and I went to your 50th birthday party.
Oh, I remember that well. Yes.
Jennifer Matthews' house,
right?
right?
Right. I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, how? I mean, I imagine, I would hope that you evolved as a poet since then. I mean, I'm sure you have. What is your take on it? I mean, you were in a different place than 20 years ago. Also. Yeah.
Well, I think my subject matter might shift a bit. I mean, I didn't have grown children then. I had babies, but I don't think I've. I mean, through the editing process, I've refined things, I guess. There are some stylistic things that have changed for a lot of us. We don't start each line with capitals anymore. We don't necessarily feel like we have to have all the lines the same length or stanzas the same length. You know, we're freer.
Do you think you're a better poet now than when you started?
Well, I hope so. I think maybe the subject matter has deepened just because of longer resonances.
Okay, okay. Now, um, a number of poems in your collection, Seldom Purely, from the Ibbetson Street Press, is about your mother. And the poem Dinner, you seem to have a sort of early feminist awakening to the rule of the patriarch, your dad and men in general. Can you comment on that?
Well, I'll never forget when I confronted my mother about, well, what have you done with your life? I'm the sixth of her six children. So that was pretty terrible. I think back then, I just was looking at it and seeing that he had all the power. But she had her ways, and she got her way quite a lot.
Would you like to read that poem to us now?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Dinner. I befriend my mother, sympathize with her burdens, but desire my father's power. I want to have the same power to dominate the table, dictate the order of the day, rule by glares and glances. Mom sprinkles too much pepper on her food and enjoys a purgative fit of sneezing. Dad continues hoovering his meal, apparently inured to this wild ritual. Grandfather clock ticks in the corner.
Now, yeah, I love that last line also, the grandfather clock. And it
It's
ticked
funny
now again, it ticked again. Now,
this
this
is
also
my grandfather's clock, in fact.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny, huh? Sweet mystery of life. There is a deep focus in your poems about your children, of course, and there's a wonderful piece about their different sort of births. One was more difficult than the other. I think your daughter had a freer birth than your son did, and you use your kids. I like how you use your kids as metaphor. How you use your children as metaphor. Maybe you could just talk a bit about that poem and that idea.
Well, I think they're just literal children here, aren't they?
Yeah.
Their beginnings, though, I think were sort of metaphorical.
Well, when you said little, I was thinking more of little weed, where you were talking about the kid as a little weed and things like that.
Yes, that's a metaphor, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about two beginnings in Boston.
Right. Maybe the metaphor was the wrong word, but maybe I mean, in terms of birth, I mean, was the person was my daughter? Your daughter came out easily, and your son not so easily. So, was their personalities similar to the way they were birthed?
In a way, yes. I mean, my son was a little more difficult as a child, but I think mainly because he didn't have a playmate, and then when he got a playmate, he was better.
Okay.
But also because he was born early. It was a little rocky at the beginning, but he got everything he needed eventually, and now he's big and strong.
And how does he react to this poem and your daughter?
Well, I think it probably makes my daughter proud because it sounds like she's tougher than he is, but he's tough enough to take it. He doesn't. What he said when I handed him a pile of poems before he went off to college was, Thanks. I really felt that here. And that's all I ever heard of it. My
Yeah.
daughter actually talks to me about my poetry a little bit,
Okay.
but
Now,
he's an engineer,
yeah, right. Well,
more of an artist.
so you know, who was the famous poet who was a insurance executive? Now it escapes me, but T.S. Eliot was a banker, right? So
Right. It's the Connecticut guy. Oh,
now yeah, I think we're having a senior moment or something like that. And I can't remember
yeah,
his
I
name.
remember writing about him really hung me up in college, and I went to talk to my professor about it. He wrote,
William Meredith was your professor at college, wasn't he?
yes, yes, but this was a different professor that I had to write this paper for. Meredith, I just took a poetry workshop with.
Okay.
That was lucky.
Okay. So why don't you read that poem about the uh,
Two beginnings in Boston.
two beginnings in Boston?
All right. Michael came out half-baked and finished up in the incubator. It took him a week to learn to suckle. We spent hours each day in the NICU, kangarooing him next to our skin and learning CPR before we took him home. I fretted so much over everything I did for him. At 6 weeks, I worried he'd not yet smiled, then realized he had no role model for smiling. The nurse was frantically calling for a doctor when Celia was born, but she managed to break out on her own. As she was being cleaned up across the room, I summoned myself to address her. "Hi, sweetie, I'm right here." She turned her head straight to me, strong-willed and ready. Lucky girl, she basks in the love first forged by her brother.
Thank you. Now, my 94-year-old mother is near her swan song, and so I was touched by your poem for B.S. I'm sorry, B.S. My handwriting's been there for B.S. For
Haviland.
Evelyn, right? And you use the metaphor of fishing as a way for letting her get her off from your own hook. You had a vested interest in keeping her going, even though, and that's a problem we all face with our parents and things. And so it speaks to me. Maybe you can comment about that.
Well, my sister had spent a lot of time taking care of my mom, and she was just dead tired. And I came down, this was in New Jersey, where my family's from. And she, so I was doing the bye-bye duty, you know. I was there, and we knew it was coming because she couldn't eat anymore and she had a do not resuscitate. And I was, you know, trying to just be there, you know, and notice how she was. And there's not much you can do, but I was company. There's another poem here that I read to her during this time, but I can read this one first if you like.
Which one would you prefer to read?
Well, the one Holding On is actually kind of a fantasy about a good death. So how
Yeah, I
about if
remember
we
that one. Yeah.
read this one
Okay.
for your mother?
Thank you.
Okay.
But my point about you, she was almost on your hook. Like you wanted to keep her. I mean, for some, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I needed her to help me let go.
Yeah.
And so I remembered how many times she helped me get fish off the hook, and
Okay.
a million other little things that she helped me not fret so much about.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that
Yeah.
clarification.
If you'd like, I'll read that one.
No, whatever you feel. Might be
Okay.
very poignant to read one because my mother is now DNR and in the nursing home and quarantine and all that stuff. So I've
Yeah.
got a lot of stuff around me. Mortality is all around me these days.
I think I should read both.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. For B.S. Haviland. Mom seems to sleep as she pants through her dying. The woman who always so easily brushed off a skinned knee. I wish I could think of something other than a perch or rock bass I'd just fished from the river, gasping on the dock's edge. Calling to my mother up at the cottage, I ask her to please release the poor creature from my hook. Smooth down the fins from front to back so they don't cut you. Pull the hook back through the hole, careful not to tear its lip. A twist of the wrist, a flip of the tail, and the dark dart shoots through cool ripples of green light. The next one is called Holding On. So I've just let go, but this is perhaps from her perspective. Holding on. I died and went to the amorphous place where we go, perhaps. I was permitted to see my hands for a while, but did not recognize them. They could have been anyone's hands. Straining to read the map of their story, liver spots, uneven nails, I discerned a life full of holding on. Light pulled my gaze, but I turned from the glint of it, bouncing off things, windowsills, mirror lakes, high-rise buildings, to the diffuse light of wide open sky, where I was warmed and cupped by impossibly soft hands, also like mine, softly kneading.
Now,
My,
oh, go ahead.
my friend Hillary accused me of writing a poem of faith there. It is sort of seeming like you're going back to your creator there, but
Okay.
I think
Nothing.
it was really just a fantasy on my part because I'm not particularly a person of faith, but I still feel you can attach to something stronger or that seems bigger than you,
Yeah.
especially in writing.
Writing is an act of spirituality in some cases, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Now, Lloyd Shorts, our current poet laureate, Pulitzer Prize winner, wrote that your poems are deceptively little. Do you prefer the short poem to the longer poem? And how do you interpret what he said?
Well, I'm hoping he means that although they're little, there's lots in them.
That's what I'm thinking. Deceptively, yeah. But I mean, are you more with the short poem or the longer form or?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's just what comes to me. It's I mean, I could tell longer stories and maybe someday I will, but I feel like the brief vignette kind of gets to the heart quickly and helps somebody who needs that little moment.
Is it hard to cut the fat from the poem for you, or is it a difficult process?
No, I write short poems.
Okay, so you don't start but you could start out with a longer poem that you intended. And you really have an economy of words, is what I'm trying to get at. But that just comes naturally, and you don't seem to.
It does. I write long journal entries.
Okay,
So there's different kinds of writing, but when I think of I mean, a poem is kind of a crystalline moment that tends to come to me in kind of a flash, and I have to get it down pretty quickly. And definitely there's editing. There's been a lot of editing over the last several years. Um,
Did you study
but
with Susan Donnelly at all?
I did. I was going
Yes.
to mention
Yeah.
her
Yeah. Go ahead.
and Suzanne Berger.
I haven't
But
seen her in a while. She used to teach at Leslie. I don't know. Is she still
I
around?
saw her, I think it was the summer before last at a
Yeah.
reading in Newton.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, she still lives in Somerville, I think.
Oh, okay. But anyway, go
Um,
ahead. Tell us about your experience with Susan Donnelly.
Susan's been a huge help and support and inspiration. I think she's a really fine poet, and she runs a workshop that I took a couple of times, and I met my friend Hilary Salick there.
Denise Provost, another noted poet,
Yes, well,
was there.
I recommended her to
Oh,
me.
oh.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so she. I mean, I remember you gave me the chance to read with her at the New England Poetry Club over out in Concord,
The old man's.
the Old Man's. But she was.
Yes.
How did she inspire you? I mean, What did you learn? I mean, if you could just sort of
Well, she
encapsulate.
gives wonderful writing prompts.
Okay.
So I guess that's inspiring. And she has a way of really cutting through the crap. I think sometimes we get full of ourselves as poets, and she doesn't try to bring you down, but she kind of helps you very gently to see where you're overinflating a small point, and you should kind of moderate and modulate that. I can't
You
think of
really
it.
need someone who's objective, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So she's read she read both my books before they were published and gave me feedback. So that was incredibly helpful.
Now tell me, you're with the New England Poetry Club, and you know, is Mary Bodwell's the president? You're the treasurer, and Hillary Salick is what is her position? I'm sorry.
Vice president.
Vice president.
Yeah.
And you guys run the show now, and I'm glad to know you all and published you all, except for no Hillary. I published in Ibbetson. What have you brought to the plate, and what do you feel the legacy of Diana de Hovhanessian, the former president, longtime president, was?
Well, she kept things going so adroitly for so many years, Diana de Hovhanessian, and she was a good poet. She kind of held on to the reins rather tightly, and the things were a little different back then. You had to kind of prove your poetic prowess before you were allowed into the club. And now we think, if you enjoy poetry, come to the club, why not? But Diana, she really had a lot of great poets come to the Longfellow House readings, and she got that set up, I presume. I don't think it was before her time, because she was for about 50 years president.
She must have known Amy Lowell. I'm
Oh
joking.
gosh, I don't think so. But yeah. Well, you went to her memorial. Yeah, I mean, we learned more about her there than we knew before. But
Well, what other things have you brought into the New England Poetry Club? I know you're much more welcoming, let's say,
we're trying
and
to
you're
be
more,
that.
and you brought it into the computer age.
Right, we got a website.
Yeah.
And well,
I miss those little pamphlets though they used to send out.
oh, I know that the writ.
Yeah, the writ.
Yeah.
Diane and I, but mailing them was a horror because mailing them for a nonprofit and you have an angry postal worker, not fun, not fun.
No,
But
no.
I guess in these days you don't need to do that anymore. It's a needless expense.
We can't really do it. We just don't have the time.
Yeah,
It's so much easier to just send out newsletters by email.
email. Yeah.
So unfortunately, there probably were a few old timers that may have gotten left behind. We sent out a big mailing to them, snail mail, and said, if you want to continue, this is how we're doing it.
How would
Um,
one join the New England Poetry Club? What?
well, if you go to nepoetryclub.org, and you click on join, it tells you how. Mainly, you really just have to pay dues.
We all have to pay our dues.
and then come and join us, for readings, and people who have new books can get on our reader members with new books reading series, and that's very helpful for people who are trying to get their name known and their books sold.
And from my
So
impression, even though you're welcoming to all, the quality of the poets who are involved in the club is very high, even though, someone who's emerging or, just starting out can come too. You notice that?
yeah, I believe that it is, and I think that people join New England Poetry Club because they're
Serious.
serious about their writing.
Hmm.
They're serious about loving beautiful writing, and so anybody who feels that way is likely to produce good writing. you know um, I can't uh, you know say otherwise why that would be. um, we're trying to expand. We've got a new board of advisors.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to look for ways to make the club more welcoming to a diverse group of people. I mean, let's face it, we're mostly old white folks.
I know.
And we got to get
I
some new.
remember in the old days it was like a tea party, when
Yes,
they.
yes. Well, I think in the old days it was much more vibrant, and so that's kind of what we hope to get back to. And
Okay.
so we're looking for new ways, and the latest thing is Poet in the House, which is our members running workshops and things on Zoom through
Wonderful.
us.
Wow.
And you're welcome to, Doug.
Oh,
I think
thank you.
you should. You should come up with something. We'll run it.
All right. Well, that's very nice of you, Linda. And you want to read another poem from the book? And by the way, the book is published by Ibbetson Street. You can purchase it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, but we greatly appreciate if you purchase it on lulu.com, so everyone makes some money. And that's it. So go ahead.
Thank you. Let's see. Well, here's one, an oldie, but somehow I think since we can't go anywhere, people like to go to the beach. I'm going to read this one about walking along Harding's Beach, one of my favorite places on the Cape. But I'm having some not entirely happy thoughts, but interesting, I think. Line drawing. Walking along Harding's Beach at low tide this fall day, I am contemplating lines. The rhythm of the waves and the walking conjures the face of my art teacher to my surprised consciousness. She was the one with the happy hum and vacant grin, the one who taught me to see all the colors in a gray winter landscape, the one twice hospitalized for nervous breakdowns. The cold shoulders of the ineluctable sea heave up their wealth, leopard-spotted crab shells, scallop fans, gummy green seaweed fingers stretching from a fist of mussels clumped on a rock with barnacles. Each barnacle a silica kiss or baby volcano, all marking the inner edge of the sound, making lines of sea froth and sand treasures, which stretch to the horizon where they meet in any good lesson on perspective.
Thank you so much, Linda. Do you have a reading coming up with your book? I know it's hard these days, you know.
There's one in March, and I don't know if I can tell you the date right now, but if you are in New England Poetry Club, it's with the New England Poetry Club. But there will probably be more
Okay.
before then. So
and
you
you're
go to lindaconte.net and I'll be
right.
advertising.
Thank you so much, Linda, for joining us on Poet to Poet, Writer to Writer.
Thank you.